Welcome to the Sunday worship service of the First Church in Boston, a Unitarian Universalist congregation in Back Bay. The senior minister at First Church is Reverend Dr. Stephanie May. Her sermon is entitled Countless Generations. Today's music associate is First Church director and organist, Gigi Mitchell Velasco.
Good morning. We are here on this wonderful Sunday with, I'm always amazed at the sound of this sanctuary and the music that comes from it. So I'm very appreciative this morning of the opening piece. We welcome all of our visitors and guests and friends to First Church this morning. I am Mary Ellen Norman, one of the standing committee members and also the treasurer of this church. If you would like to know more about First Church Boston, please seek out Stephanie May, Reverend Stephanie May at Coffee Hour or myself. Check us out online, as well as joining us in many of our learning opportunities. But one of the things I would like to address with our congregation is the celebration of our canvas. And we had at $115,000 pledged as part of the canvas this year, so thank you very much for your generosity. And up until this point, as we close the second quarter, we have received $85,000 of that $115,000. And I want to thank you all for your generosity and really make a point that you are really part of our interwoven fabric of friends and members and donors who are essential in supporting and uplifting each other in our spiritual home here. And we're recreating that spiritual home, and I am so proud to be part of it. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rosemary, who's going to update us about the GBIO.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. I'm Rosemary Keene, one of the co-chairs, along with Mary Lou McLean of our Social Justice Community Group. Most of our plate collection information today you can see on the third page of your program. Our plate collection is going to the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization today. Most of you are quite familiar with it, but As I was thinking about this collection today, I was reminded of Reverend Stephanie's sermon last week, which was about the power of love. And we can, it's wonderful to know that our donations today are going to support housing for people who, without our help, would be experiencing terrible anxiety and lack of safety in some cases because of our housing situation today in Massachusetts. So in Stephanie's words, this organization and our donations will help us to love the hell out of the world. Thanks for your generosity.
So as you can see, your time, energy, and financial support makes our church a spiritual home, and our community efforts and outreach essential, especially when we are all in need. So I want to thank you again for being here today, and let our service begin.
As Unitarian, nope. Nope. Is that on? Yes. Yeah, you did good. As Unitarian Universalists, we honor the wisdom of many spiritual traditions. Within many earth-based spiritualities of the Northern Hemisphere, this moment of seasonal change reminds us of the cycles of life and death that extend through countless generations. Our service today embraces this theme and calls us to remember our ancestors who may have died, but who remain alive in us, in our memories. To begin our service, I invite you to join in the ancient earth-based practice of calling the directions to create a circle of sacred time and space for our gathering this morning. Please rise in body or in spirit. Turning to face the east. We begin by facing east as we invoke into our circle the element of air. From the first breath of an infant definitely more alive. You guys do the turning on. We begin by facing east as we invoke into our circle the element of air. From the first breath of an infant to the last breath each living being draws, we welcome air as part of the cycle of life. Turning to the south, we invoke the element of fire, recognizing the many forms of fire, from the sun above to the pilot light in our oven to the spark that ignites a bomb. We respect the transformative power of fire that helps to sustain and change life. Turning now to the west, we invoke the element of water, aware of the fragile balance between droughts of not enough water and floods with too much water. We acknowledge our need of water to live, as well as its capacity to disrupt and remake the landscapes of our living. Turning again to face the north, we invoke the element of earth. We recognize our dependence upon the earth for the crops we eat, the granite monuments that remember those who have died, and the structures of wood and stone in which we live, work, and gather. Having cast our circle, we turn again to face the chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism,
And as I light the chalice, I invite you, if you wish, to affirm our connections to each other by saying together the First Church Boston affirmation printed in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please take a moment now to greet one another. Please join in singing our opening hymn, number 103, For All the Saints. This is a classic hymn of the Christian tradition to honor ancestors. Please join in singing 103.
Good morning. Okay. This is the part of the service that is a time for all ages. I'm Doug Miller. I'm assisted today by my friend Sage Weaver. Now, I've been a Unitarian for quite a few years, and I understand that this is the part, and everywhere, what's the end of the beginning of the help. Sorry, I'm old. Okay, we help each other search for truth and seek the truth. And anyway, it's Halloween time. Time for thinking about ancestors. Time. Well, I'm a Miller. Sage, you're a Weaver. Now, funny thing, I know a long line of Millers that came before me. One of them had a kind of a mill for sheep threads, but have you ever thought about going as a Weaver on Halloween?
No.
I've never thought of going as a Miller on Halloween. I suppose we could. I think we should just do the show now. I do remember once in high school going as a pile of leaves. And part of that pile of leaves was my now wife, Ellie, and she'll be assisting us as signpost. Okay, so thank you. Bear with us. I will try to, yes, thank you. This is part of the joy of Sunday School RE is that young people start by being a bit in awe, and gradually they take care of the old people and help them deal with complicated stuff. Thank you, Sage. Okay, so places. Okay, and we will begin, and you will help us by enjoying the show because the show is about two characters, a frog and a toad, who are best friends. Now, you might ask, how could two amphibians who come from different parts of the swamp be best friends? It's just a topic for discussion in Unitarian Universalist RE class. There are other things that are. Okay, so let's begin. It was October. The leaves had fallen off the trees. They were lying on the ground. Frog. Frog. Frog is thinking. Frog is wondering. Frog has an idea. I will go to Toad's house, said Frog. I will rake all the leaves that have fallen on his lawn. Toad will be surprised. Frog picked up his rake and took it out of the garden shed. Frog ran through the woods to Toad's house, through the woods so that Toad would not see him. Magic space, become Toad. Parallel story. Toad looked out the window. These messy leaves have covered everything, said Toad. He took a rake out of the closet. I will run over to Frog's house. I will rake all of his leaves. Frog will be very pleased. Toad ran through the high grass so that Frog would not see him. More magic. More magic. Frog will continue his journey having passed through magic. Frog came to Toad's house. He looked in the window. Good, said Frog. Toad is out. He will never know who raked his leaves. Frog worked hard. He raked the leaves into a pile. Soon, Toad's lawn was clean. Frog picked up his rake and started home. Magic again. Toad got to Frog's house. He looked in the window. Good, said Toad. Frog is not home. He will never guess. Who raked his leaves? Toad pushed and pulled and raked all the leaves into a pile. Soon, there was not a single leaf in Frog's front yard. Toad took his rake and started home. Magic, magic, magic. Okay. Leave them there. Okay. New character. A wind came. It blew across the land. The pile of leaves that Frog had raked for Toad blew everywhere. The pile of leaves that Toad had raked for Frog blew everywhere. When Frog got home, he said, "Tomorrow I will clean up all the leaves that are in my own lawn." How surprised, yes, how surprised Toad must be. When Toad got home, when Toad got home, he said, "Tomorrow I will get to work and rake all my own leaves." How surprised Frog must be. That night, Frog and Toad were both happy when they each turned out the light and went to bed. Oh, and I can invite, if there are any families here, to join us downstairs. We have the downstairs is a beautiful nursery school, the John Winthrop School. We use one or two of their rooms, and we get together, we have a welcoming, and then we talk about deep subjects such as, what is this thing about autumn, and does the tree die when the leaves die? Do the leaves die? What's the tree growing in anyway? Is that old tree that it's growing in? Well, shall we go? Shall we stay or shall we go? We can sit in back. I'm going to turn this off.
Our reading this morning is by Elandria Williams, who was a vibrant and energetic young leader in the Unitarian Universalist Association, serving as co-moderator from 2018 to 2020, and sadly dying at the age of 41 in 2020. Elandria grew up in the same Unitarian Universalist church in Tennessee where I grew up 30 years before, and where I'm sure both of us took part in skits like the wonderful one we have just seen and were part of our memories. I never met Elandria, but I did meet their parents in the later years when I was visiting my mother. So these words resonate for me. I hope they resonate for all of us, but particularly because some of the ancestors Elandria refers to are mine as well. So these are Elandria's words. Honoring our ancestors. The history and legacy of Unitarian Universalism are shaped by the ancestors in our congregations. I came as a fourth grader to my congregation, the Tennessee Valley Unitarian Universalist Church in Knoxville, Tennessee, TVUUC. That community helped bring me into social justice struggles in the world around me and inside the UUA. My church opened so many doors because they held young people in high esteem and encouraged our leadership in the church and community. My religious education teachers, friends' parents, and spirit aunts and uncles were and still are community leaders in everything from nuclear disarmament to anti-racism, anti-oppression issues. They have been my inspiration as I work to support others who are called by their faith to change hearts, minds, and communities. My church changed forever on July 27, 2008, when an armed man came into the sanctuary and killed 2 UU leaders, one a member of TVUUC and the other a member of Westside Church. This rocked our church to its core. When I first heard about it, I didn't know who had been killed. My mom, my friends and their parents, or others who had nurtured me my entire life. I realized something that day that has stayed with me ever since. No matter what issues I have with other Unitarian Universalists regarding our visions of God, spirit, justice, race, and age, at the root of everything is community, love, and faith. That day, something larger than our individual beliefs rose up in my mind. I thought of the principles, values, and family that are the connective tissue of our faith community and that held us weeks after the shooting, 6 months later on our 60th anniversary, and still today. We are part of the connective tissue that holds the legacy and future of our faith. We are the children of freedom fighters, visionaries, and radical liberal theologians. We are the phoenix rising out of the ashes of the McCarthy era and the civil rights, women's, and queer liberation movements. We are the survivors and beneficiaries of youth-led and youth-focused beliefs and programming that encouraged us to be change makers, boundary pushers, and institutionalists at the same time. We are and will be the ministers, religious educators, congregational presidents, organizers, and social change leaders our faith has led us to be. We wear our faith as tattoos on our bodies and in our hearts, as testaments to the blood, tears, dreams, and inspirations of our community ancestors and elders.
As our moment of prayer today, I invite you into a ritual of remembrance. You should have received a note card and pencil when you walked in. If not, simply raise your hand and Joanne can bring you one. Reflecting on Alejandra Williams' words that Barbara read for us. I invite you to write a name or names of the ancestors who have inspired and shaped your faith, your sense of what matters most in how and why you live. As a congregation, we are here today because of countless generations who have nurtured First Church Boston, Second Church, and all of the other congregations that are part of our history. Surrounding where I stand are copper strips and calligraphy memorials of some of the names who have sustained and shaped the story and institution of what we experience today when we enter this space or click play online. When we gather here, we are able to do so because of the many named and unnamed ancestors who wrestled with questions of belief and doubt, judgment and love, freedom and community. Their questions, their actions, their faith gave rise to the particular way of being religious as Unitarian Universalists. Perhaps the name you write will be one of the ancestors of First Church or Unitarian Universalism. Or perhaps the name of the ancestor you wish to remember today is a teacher, a grandparent, a neighbor, or even an author, composer, or activist you never met. As we enter into a moment of stillness, please rest and listen for the name or names that come to you as the ancestors whose faith or vision has inspired and shaped your own. Let us remember them. I'll now carry our brass bowl down the center aisle, and if you wish to pass your cards in, we'll create a communal bowl of our names. Blessed be the memory of our ancestors. May they continue to inspire us on our journeys. As we transition now to the offering, I invite you to do two things. Number one, listen to the music. This piece was sung 2 years ago as part of a service remembering victims of gun violence, sadly an issue that continues to disrupt our world. And secondly, please give as you're able to today's offering, which, as you heard, will be shared with the Greater Boston Interfaith Organization. And one last note, sorry. I just want to note that following the offertory song, as usual, we will sing the doxology. What I learned recently is that the words of the doxology we sing were written by Leo Collins, longtime music director and ancestor to us here.
Remember me, though I have to say goodbye. Remember me, don't let it make you cry. For even if I'm far away, I hold you in my heart. I sing a secret song to you each night we are apart.
Our second reading this morning is entitled Samhain, Ancestors and Descendants. It's by Reverend Catherine Clarenbach, a self-identified UU pagan. In it, she reflects on the holiday of Samhain, which falls on October 31st. Samhain is a high holy day, for some Wiccan pagans, the holiest night of the year, and I try to celebrate it with the solemnity and glory it merits. In its most common form, Samhain is about honoring our dead, the mighty dead who are more intimate with us because the veils of seeing are at their thinnest at this time of year. Samhain Expanded is all about the ethic of responsibility, expressed through calling out to ancestors and descendants, those who live in the shadows beyond the veil of life and death. The celebrations, memorials, and communions of Samhain are both about acknowledging what the mighty dead leave for us, as well as what we leave for our descendants unto the 1000th generation. The commemorations and devotions must come from a place of acknowledging that ancestor veneration is a complicated thing to do. I do not give praise for the violence some among my mighty dead wreaked upon others among my ancestors. I do not give praise for the alcoholism that comes down through the generations. So how might we offer thanks and praise for our dead when we have had complicated relationships with them in life, or when we know of actions we consider shameful or oppressive? Some traditions get around this conundrum by saying that the dead are wiser than they were in life, that the veil they pass through changes them, changes personality into essence, and creates them somewhat anew. While I am not opposed to this idea, I also believe that it could be a hard one for many of my UU siblings and friends to swallow. The key in the ethic of responsibility is to acknowledge that we are built of countless generations. I am built in part of shame and oppression, as well as of usefulness and glory. I am built of what my mighty dead have given, and what they have given is complicated. And so in part, Samhain is an expression of self-love. It is an expression of recognizing that life is a mixed bag, and yet it is what we have, at least for now. Samhain commemorations and devotions recognize that life is good and short, and we owe our thanks and praise to those who came before us. The flip side of all this, of course, is that we must be mindful of what we leave when we shuffle off this mortal coil. For earth, for descendants, both of our body and not, for our legacy, we will leave whoever it is we have been and whatever it is we have done. We are between the ancestors and the descendants. We are in a holy place.
We are built of countless generations, writes the Reverend Catherine Clarenbach in her reflections, Samhain, Ancestors and Descendants. However, these countless generations are a mixed bag. Some we may simply remember for the lives and actions that inspired our own. We might think of Rosa Parks daring to stay seated on a bus, or of Gandhi resisting violence and transforming a nation. Yet we may also remember the moral complexity of the extramarital affairs of the Reverend Martin Luther King, or the advocacy of Margaret Sanger for birth control and for its use in eugenics. Sometimes our ancestors are not pure exemplars. Sometimes the ancestors we would like to remember with honor remained entwined with ideas and behaviors we now question or even condemn. Drawing on the pagan tradition to write today's opening words raised this question of ancestors for me. As I wrote, I texted a clergy friend that I was experiencing some trepidation. After all, my ministerial ancestors of First and Second Church once advocated punishing and even killing women deemed to be witches, which is to say, those engaged in pagan rituals. I imagined many of my ministerial predecessors would be horrified that the minister of First Church today was, 1, a woman, and 2, honoring pagan spirituality. My colleague texted back, "It's cool to think of all the ways we are defying them now, right?" She also suggested maybe I keep some water nearby just in case, but yes, cool in some ways for sure. But I also find the tension challenging. How do we make sense of the call to honor our ancestors, but also to question or even defy them? I have felt this tension of honor and defiance in relationship to my grandma Sibley, a beloved ancestor whose locket she always wore that I wear today. When she was alive, I loved my lively, fun, witty grandma. I even spent my college spring breaks with her and my grandpa in Florida. But she was also known in the family for sending letters of concern when our choices strayed too far from her conservative Christian morality. When she lay dying from cancer, she composed a letter expressing her steadfast belief in the role of Jesus as the path to salvation and eternal life. Written from a place of genuine concern, she sent copies of the letter to each of her children and grandchildren. Tipped off to the contents of the letter, I set mine aside unread. I loved her and I disagreed with her. Years later, as I discerned becoming a Unitarian Universalist minister, I had a very active internal discussion with her. I knew she would not have approved of Unitarian Universalist theology. I finally made my peace with her when I realized that while we may never have agreed on theology, I had received from her a love of theological questions and a conviction to take religious life seriously. I could honor her as my ancestor for these gifts. Even so, had she been alive when my son came out as gay and dared to condemn him as a sinner, I would have defied her openly. Perhaps her theology would have become more liberal, modified by the reality of love for me and for my adorable son. I will never know if a different situation or social context could have changed her mind. All I can know is why I believe, think, and act as I do in my time and place. Now, as I move into my new roles as a member of and minister to First Church, I am deeply moved by the complexity of our ancestral story. With pride, I share the news of this new ministry and its deep history. I also find myself catching my breath as I walk past the John Winthrop statue, whose unmissable presence at our front entrance beckons me to wrestle with his story, a story of bold religious conviction entwined with legacies of enslavement and catastrophic consequences for the indigenous peoples of this land. And when I walk up Beacon Hill, I make a point to look over the State House fence to wave to the statue of Anne Hutchinson. By pausing to look, I seek to remember the cost she paid for speaking her religious truth, even as I consider the ways our theologies do not exactly align. We are built of countless generations. And those generations are full of ancestors whose imperfect humanity and limited understanding pervaded their ideas and their actions. These limits could serve as an excuse to just let them all off the proverbial hook. Or they could help us be reminded to be more mindful of our living and the legacies we are leaving for future generations. How humble are we in all we do not know? How open are we to the possibility that we may in fact be on the wrong side of history regarding a moral or societal issue? How committed are we to ensuring we do our best to leave the world a better place, or at least leave our corner of the world a little better? The older I become, the more aware I am that we will not fix or perfect the world. But neither do I think this means we surrender our efforts to make it better. Looking more deeply into various historical moments, I am often struck by the presence of significantly more tension and resistance to dominant ideas than I initially understood. Often we simply learn about the winners, but do not always register just how close or vicious the fight was. For example, we learn about the great success of the ratification of the 19th Amendment granting women's suffrage. However, the simple fact it was ratified in 1920 elides that it became law only after Tennessee ratified the amendment, because a 23-year-old Tennessee state representative unexpectedly voted yes to break a tie, allegedly because his mother urged him to vote yes. The more history I read, the more I realize that human society has always been made up of people with conflicting ideas, passions, and values. Nonetheless, I do not give up on our ancestors or surrender any hope for humanity in the present or future. Instead, I agree with the Reverend Clarenbach, who writes, "We must be mindful of what we leave when we shuffle off this mortal coil. We too will die, and we will leave for our legacy whatever it is we have been and whatever it is we have done. We are between the ancestors and the descendants. We are in a holy place." These moments of our living are a gift that we receive from those who came before us. Our world emerges from those whose ideas and actions gave us life-giving penicillin and the violence of the Colosseum. We receive a world from those whose beliefs built the majestic beauty of the Taj Mahal and the hellish destruction of the atom bomb. So also we receive a world from those whose dreams fostered democracy and those who used democratic process to create Jim Crow laws. Recognizing the range of moral possibilities in the world we inherit, might we be more mindful of the choices we make and the legacies we leave behind. These moments of our lives are a sacred gift We are neither our ancestors nor are we our descendants. We are the ones who bear the weight of this moment on planet Earth. We can seek to learn from the wisdom and the failings of our ancestors. And we can seek to leave behind a bit more of what we understand to be good and loving and life-giving for this generation and the next. May it be so. Amen. Our closing hymn is number 1051, We Are. It's in that teal book. Please rise in body or in spirit as we sing this hymn to the ancestors. Please join me in extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. One of the reasons I love the practice of casting a circle is it creates, the intention is to create a circle of energy that holds us through sacred time and space. And the ritual then calls to open the circle so that we re-enter the world around us. So please join me in calling the directions again. We do it in reverse order, so stay where you are facing north, and then west, south, east. Beginning by facing the north, we thank Earth for sustaining us across countless generations of life, death, and remembrance. Turning to the west, We thank water for so often refreshing us in body and spirit. Turning again to the south, we thank the element of fire for its catalyzing power to effect change. And turning to the east, we thank air for each breath that sustains us. The circle is open. Let us go now into a world full of beauty and brokenness, holding fast to our faith in the flourishing of life, the abundance of love, and in an ever more inclusive we. Amen.